And welcome to another Biddle on February 22nd, 2020. How's everybody doing?
Doing
Good.
Excellent.
Good,
Thank
doing
you.
good.
Doing well, thank you.
We're good.
All right,
Good,
we
good.
are officially open
Okay.
for business. And we have Barb back, so we're good to go. All right.
Now we just need Barb's cats.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll be back. One was already here.
Yeah, hear the cats.
So this past week, we were trying out Clear Linux, and I know every single one of you probably tried it out and has some great stuff to talk about. But hold on, we'll get into that in a couple minutes. All right. Well, why don't we get right into it? We have enough time pretty much to go around and see if anybody has any second thoughts or afterthoughts from their first week of trying it out. I was kind of feeling under the weather this week, so I did not get to do anything on Clear Linux past what I had done last week. But to be honest with you, I had no problems with Clear Linux at all. I do have an AMD test machine, so that may have something to do with it. I don't know. But it installed fine. It worked perfect. The only thing I needed was, I was planning on trying to do some Phoronix Test Suite benchmarks, and such a noob, couldn't figure out how to do the Phoronix Test Suite. I installed it, opened it up, and had no idea what I was doing with it. So that's as far as I got with it. But it worked perfect for me. I didn't have any issues whatsoever with it. Dan, how about you?
I unfortunately did not get a chance to try Clear Linux, so I don't have a lot to comment other than it's just not your normal geared towards your desktop experience from what I know of it. But other than that, that's all I've got.
Well, that's what I was kind of happy about trying it to begin with, was because we normally steer into the desktops that are made for desktop users. And this is not something that we would have picked on our own. So you can all thank Thomas's script that he wrote for having us try Linux.
No, that's a really good thing. Honestly, it is. It's good that we get to try these other things.
I think it was really good that we got to try it. I can't say that we'll have a ton of info about it because it's not geared towards us. Mm-hmm. It's not geared towards a desktop user. So, Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I also didn't really get to it. Unfortunately, I had just one of those weeks. And yeah, I don't know. I went through the website. I think it's a Focus distro, right? I think we got into that a little bit last week, where it seems like they have some pretty clear focus on specific areas. And I'm not saying that desktop can't be one of those, but I'm not sure that is really addressing, let's say, the desktop usage. Maybe less so than other things. So, yeah, I think through a lack of just kind of interest a little bit on my part, which I know that's unfair, but also just being busy, I just really didn't get to it. So it's not a reflection on them or the work that they've done. It's just, I think hopping has gotten to me just a little bit.
That can happen.
Yeah. And I'm in that period where you kind of need a break. And I'm not going to continue to participate, but I just needed a break this round. And unfortunately, Clear Linux got the short straw on that one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I'm somewhat there myself, so I can understand that. And real life sometimes gets in the way too, so it's fair.
Yep.
Eris, I hope you have a better review than Eric and I.
Well, it'll be short. I downloaded it and I put it on my key, booted it up, and it wouldn't let me install or do anything with it because my CPU is not supported, which I find kind of interesting because mine, even though it's an old CPU, it's an i7, and it does support, according to the website, it supports the core processor family. So I'm not sure why mine is not compatible. It complains something about multiplication ability, carry less, I guess, multiplication, I think, is the function that my CPU doesn't have.
Well, that's strange.
Yeah.
Just a question, Aris. There is a script that you run that tells you whether it's supported or not. Did you try that?
No, I didn't try it. No, I just booted it up, and then it complains. It says looking for some function, can't find it, some multiplication thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it said when I tried it, it said checking for compatibility or whatever it was. And I'm running it on an older XPS 13 and it ran. Which it's an
Yeah.
i7. I mean, it's like circa 2014.
Right.
Yeah. Mine's older than that, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
maybe that's why. Yeah. So that's about it.
Oh, well, good to know. Tony, how are you, sir?
Good, thanks. And you?
I'm doing well. You got any thoughts for Clear Linux here?
I had another play about with it. I still think it's quite good, but it was Zoom I couldn't get installed. I went to their website and followed their tutorial, and it told me that it couldn't find something called Flat Hub, and I tried installing SWUPD, whatever that is, and it turned around and told me that that was already installed, therefore it wasn't going to install it again, so I didn't need to do that bit. And I sort of lost interest after that, and sort of I did a Zeb next. That's it, really.
All right. Well, hey, at least you gave it a shot. And this is the kind of feedback that if they are interested in desktop users, maybe this is something that helps them understand that people are hitting certain roadblocks. So it's all good feedback.
I think part of the problem is the amount of software available within the system is limited. So you've got to go outside of that. And if you can't get it to install following their own tutorial, then, you know, a relative newbie's got absolutely no chance.
Yeah, that was something that came up last week with the bundles and the idea of versioned bundles, and that you could have different groups, you know, different versions of things. Again, I think the use case being more towards development, things like that. And so I'm curious to see if anyone, as we get down through here, approached it from that perspective, or if this is more just general desktop use. But for people who are just trying to use a, you know, I looked at some of those install commands, and I did think that's a little esoteric for, you know, just random desktop, you know, installation. So there you go.
Yeah, it's Jason, not really it's a market.
Yeah, exactly. Jason Starbuck.
Well, I had some similar issues to what Eris had initially. I tried to install it on an old Intel machine, and it didn't like it for whatever reason. I was getting some, you know, it wasn't compatible. Then so I installed it on a even older AMD machine, and it ran fine. So I don't know what was going on with the Clear Linux there, but so I have it on an older AMD laptop, and it's run fine. I mean, I've been able to install pretty much anything that I wanted to install on it. It ran it. I had no issues. I did not try to install Zoom because I wasn't planning on using that laptop for like the, you know, any Zoom things, any meetings or anything. I just downloaded the, you know, the basics, web browsers and programs I use on it on a daily. But it all ran fine on the AMD machine. Intel, no, didn't like it.
Slightly ironic, but there you go. All right, Thomas. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. How about you?
I'm well, thank you. Did you get a chance to try Clear Linux?
Briefly, yes. So I installed Clear Linux in a virtual machine, and I went into that thinking that it wouldn't perform nearly as well as it would on normal hardware. Unfortunately, my testing laptop is still, you know, not working properly. So the performance was okay. I noticed it was Gnome. That wasn't really something I expected from a performance-oriented distribution, but if it works, it works. Okay. To that end, I did notice that they had Gnome tweaks installed by default, which is something that I think more desktop Linux distributions need to do. If you ship with Gnome, you need Gnome tweaks. Unless you are like made by the Gnome developers, you gotta have Gnome tweaks. Because if a person is someone who uses Gnome on a daily basis and they don't have a thing for stock Gnome, they're going to install Gnome tweaks anyway.
Thomas, are you saying it wasn't installed?
No, it was installed.
Oh, I was going to say,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, like I'm saying that's a good thing. That's
Yep.
something that more distros need to do.
Agreed.
So it took me a little bit to figure out what their package manager was. And once I did figure it out, when I saw the whole bundle thing, I was thinking like it was installing not just like if I wanted, for instance, gedit. If I was going to do like bundle add gedit, I thought it was going to be installing like not just gedit, but also all these other things that I didn't want installed. So I was under the impression that it was like you only install a bunch of apps at a single time, not more like a sudo apt install. And I didn't learn until later it was more like a sudo apt install where that's just pulling in dependencies. So they need to fix their wording on that. Otherwise, it seems like they're seriously pushing Flatpak, because I went into their software, their little GUI package manager thing, and it started talking about Flatpaks. So I'm like, okay, this works. Not a big deal. I've used Flatpaks before. Other than that, it was super easy to get using it. I noticed somewhere somebody was talking about some of the tools you may use on different distros that I personally use as a developer, maybe in different packages, and the names may not be the same or follow the same naming scheme. So that kind of bugged me, but I didn't really do any development on it. So it, overall, I think they do a lot of things right on the graphical side of things, but I feel like under the hood, they have a long way to go to be more favored by the Linux community. And until they do those things, they're not going to be used unless you need the absolute best performance in every situation possible. And security is not a big issue because, as we've seen, and as is in the documentation, the Spectre and Meltdown mitigations are disabled, and that's not something I want to do. So,
yep, they are. But you said about the Flatpaks, and I had actually not went into the Software Center yet because I forget. I went into the Software Center and I went and searched for a program. It wasn't on there, so I went to their website looking for it, and that's when I found the software basically section in their site, and it listed like packages together and along with Flatpak. So you could install like the desktop extras or whatever they called them, and it would install all of these things that I guess they thought you would need for, I don't know. I don't know how
right.
I don't know what the rhyme or reason was for the packages themselves, but thought it was a little bit interesting the way they did it.
Right. I only really went in there just to like see what they had. That's all I really ever use a graphical package manager for these days, just figuring out what's there.
Right.
But yeah, once I noticed that they had Flatpak by default.
All right, Chris, what do you think about Clear Linux?
Tell you the truth, I was kind of interested in how it would work, considering who is the behind the development of it. However, I was not able to get it to work on my hardware, which is a testament to its age, really. It was looking to be able to tweak performance and stuff like that, and my processor, it's not even a dual core. It's single thread and 2 gigs of RAM, and that's the max I can have on it. So my test bed just was not suitable for
Right.
For this round.
All right, Thomas, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'm good. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
that's all right. That's all right. Joe,
hello.
What's happening?
I didn't really try it per se. When I did have it downloaded, I put it in a VM a couple weeks ago when you guys first announced it. Sorry if I sound a little hoarse. I'm coming off of kind of where you were, Rocco. I had a flu last week. But anyway, I thought like my usual, I thought I'll throw it in a VM and see if it boots up and try to do an install or whatever. And it didn't like the installation in the VM. And as a fluke, I went to reboot and I was going to just wipe the USB drive. I thought, I don't know if I want to mess with something that's going to be a challenge to get going. And it booted up in the USB drive live perfectly fine. And I do have AMD system. I don't know that matters or not with USB. But quite honestly, it wasn't something that, in my initial look, that excited me enough to really just look in depth at it. I know it's probably not fair to helping them out, but I did watch you guys last week at least, and conversations about it. And I guess I'm kind of getting like Eric, where I'm getting a little bit, I don't want to say burned out, but I think part of the reason I don't test a lot anymore is because I don't want to be tempted to hop if I really don't want to, number one. But the other thing too is if I put it in a VM and it doesn't excite me, I don't usually look that hard at it. And it's not fair to the developers. I know that's what we're trying to do, is help the developers here. So I do try to at least put my foot forward on some of these. But as far as that goes, that's about the extent of my exposure to it. If what I understand with what you guys spoke about last week about it being maybe more of a, I don't remember if you called it enterprise or something more, to that level. To me, I kind of look at the distros more as something. It'd be nice if it was something that was told up front that maybe that's what it's geared toward, rather than, we get used to doing these installs and hopefully they go pretty seamless, and, like what the typical user or average user would want to use coming to Linux. And I didn't see anything or any documentation anywhere that said it was something that would be more potentially commercial or enterprise level or to look at, So, and that could have been my end or not, but, I find myself having less patience for something that I have to work that hard at, where if I'm trying to look for something that might be a good option for somebody coming to Linux, that's where I kind of lean toward too.
Well, Joe, that's why I said I thought it was good for us to try this because you're right. We do get into a situation where we really only, not where we try to be that way, but we really try the ones that are pretty much easy. And I'm not saying we need to go install Arch or anything like that, because we've done that already too. But I think once in a while it's good for us to try some of the ones that maybe take us out of our comfort zone. So, but it's okay. It's okay that you didn't. I mean, that's okay. It's okay that Eric didn't, and anybody else that didn't. It's okay.
And that's why I say I don't want to be unfair to the developers either, because, even something that's not so easy out of the box deserves a look. It's just, like I said, I think a lot of us here, we try so many of them, after a while, you want to do it, but then you're kind of pushing yourself, and it shouldn't be like that, so.
Well, it shouldn't be like that. So if that comes to that, then you just skip a week or skip a dual week, that's all. Not a big deal, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. That's part of the assessment too, is how much, even though you say you want to be fair to the developers, but that's part of the experience that you're going to have is the first impression and what you think and what you think it's going to be for you. So I think even that feedback is probably valuable for developers too. So,
yep.
Barb, how are you this evening?
I'm fine, thank you. I did try just the USB. I didn't install it on anything. And I thought, well, I don't know, for some reason I said, I'll see how it does on my XPS 13, because that's probably one of my older machines. And I almost thought of, trying it as the USB on my Mac, and I thought, no. I don't know why. There's something that bothered me about that. And I like the way it looks. And yes, even with the running it on the USB, it was really quite snappy. But I'm kind of like, if you're looking at something that is for new users, people coming to Linux, this is not it. There are software pack programs that I use that are not in their repos. And you know what? I don't want to have to go around and kind of mess around and recompile it and all that. I want to be able to just I'm getting old and lazy, and I just want to go and download it and install it. And I guess
Just
it's because
want it to work, Barb.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because I spent too many years, frogging around with things and trying to get them to work and, beating my head against my desk and the wall. And I don't want to do that anymore. I'm past that. But I think that it's not designed for the average desktop user. I think it is tailored for almost a specific type of developer or a specific type of system. I don't think if you're going to sit there and create just regular user applications, I don't even know if it's that great for that. There's just something about it that it was really cool, and I liked the way it worked. And yes, the first thing I noticed was, oh my goodness, it's Gnome, which surprised me. I didn't expect that. But it was okay. And I didn't have any problems. Of course, everyone's now using something other than Thunderbird for an email client. That was number one thing. That's what I check is what do they have that I use. So I'd have to uninstall Evolution and install Thunderbird and stuff like that. And then there's some packages that I use. I only use Aftershock Pro 3. And I can't, and that's a proprietary software, and I realize that. But if you have if you're running Debian or you're running like Fedora or something, no problem, because they've got the debs and they've got the RPMs. And I think you can actually even get it on, I think even on OpenSUSE, if I remember correctly. But there was no way I could have gotten it. And so that to me it's not, and that was when I realized I don't think it's designed for your typical desktop user who's going to process photos and videos and, write letters and do all that kind of stuff. It's really more as a programmer's tool.
Right. No, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. But I liked it. If I was into that anymore, I would probably look at it more seriously.
Gotcha. Well, thanks, Barb.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Stephen, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Any thoughts on Clear Linux?
Nothing beyond what I had last week. But by the way, Barb, there's nothing wrong with being old and lazy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've gotten that way. I can't help it.
Yeah, some of us have.
All right.
So, Colin, I think you made another video this week on Clear Linux or Clear OS, did you not?
Yes, I did. I made a video on how to dual boot with an Ubuntu base, which was elementary. I used because that was the one that I actually messed up last week during the Biddle challenge, Biddle talks last week. I was trying to dual boot it, but it wasn't as simple as what I first thought. So,
did you have to do it in a specific order, or?
Yeah, they've got it on their website, or well, the website that I found that shows you how to go through the procedure, and I thought I'd put that on video, and it worked out pretty well. I haven't done a standard install on it yet. I've only done the dual boot one, so I was just interested to see that. I did that on VirtualBox, and then I did it on real hardware. So whatever I did on VirtualBox, I mirrored on the real hardware, and that worked out pretty well in both instances. So. The other things I've noticed is some things that I was trying to install. I think last week I mentioned I was trying to install Cherry Tree. Didn't have much luck with that. Tried to compile it. Didn't have much luck with that. Compiling from source. Who wants to do that really at the end of the day? And I've done it before. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. It's my Achilles heel. I couldn't browse my network on my local network at home, so I couldn't browse and get to my hard drive on the network modem. And I also couldn't install the Chrome, the Chrome Gnome shell extension to add extensions. Now they've got extensions in there, but I cannot add any more because I couldn't get the Chrome Gnome shell installed. Now, Firefox installed their bit, but there's always that extra bit, which is, I think, is the Chrome Gnome shell, and that wouldn't install. So there's just those little things that you just can't get past that I've noticed in Clear Linux. Now, as far as the desktop's concerned and the running of it, It's fast, it's zippy. It's probably one of the fastest gnomes I've actually used. It's really quick. So that's quite interesting. I haven't done a video on the desktop itself, but I've noticed it's really fast. And it does have categorized applications in the GNOME menu, which I thought that was only a thing in 3.36, but maybe it came out in 3.34, which is what they're running. So, but besides the lack of applications, I sort of agree with Barb a bit. It seems to be a specific sort of operating system. I'm not sure whether it's aimed at your average person. I'm not really sure about that because it doesn't seem to, what can you say? Doesn't seem to integrate well with other desktop environments, as my video quite clearly points out. If you want a dual boot, it doesn't make it very simple. So, and that's one thing that I noticed straight off the bat. But seems to run okay, and it's nice, and it works and it functions really well. Flatpaks I've installed, they work okay. They got the Flatpak integration in the Software Center, so that was good. And that's my findings so far. So I do tend to agree with Barb. I'm not sure whether it's aimed at your average Linux desktop user.
I don't think it is. I really don't. And that's okay. Not everything has to be for the average user.
No.
I just don't think it is. And they, even when you look at the way they write it, the way they put on their website, you can almost figure out it's definitely not for the new Linux user. Even if you are a software developer and you've never used Linux, I would not recommend it. I'd wait till you know a little bit more. I don't really think it is, and they make no bones about it. They don't say, "Oh, this is switch from Windows" type thing. They don't do that. So,
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clear Linux, I think, is just, it's one of those things that you look at because you know it has certain virtues, and you're already well aware of what Linux is, and you're already using it. And there would be some specific reason why you would look at Clear and say, okay, these features or the way they support this thing, or whatever that is. That's my guess, right? It's for a very specific target. So, all right. So Daniel, I think you made a video as well, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. How do I sound?
You sound fine.
Okay. Well, I've made a couple of videos. I haven't done a video on, the one that I did kind of started a little bit of Clear OS. It was more me trying to test out Vert Manager, which, yeah, that's a whole other conversation. So I did actually get it running in VirtualBox, and I basically just followed the steps on their website. They have a way, like if you weed through some of their websites, they have a way for actually installing it specifically for VirtualBox, where you have to tweak a bunch of the settings on there. You got to make sure that you're setting it up so that it'll run that. I can't find it right now, but it has to deal with the making sure you've got VirtualBox set up to do the recognize UEFI. I was going to try to install it on my bare metal on an extra drive, but then I realized that this is a brand new machine, well, relatively brand new machine, but I have everything set up in legacy mode. So like I knew it wasn't going to even boot. So I didn't even bother mucking around with that. So it runs actually pretty good. Like I've got it running on my other window now. I do agree with like Barb and Colin. I don't think it's really geared towards like a new user or even your casual user. I was scrolling through their software center. They've got a lot of, like, just because I'm a nerd, they've got a lot of stuff under data science. Like they've got a pretty extensive section on data science software that you can download. They've got a bunch of different developer tools in here. So it seems to me like it's really geared towards maybe certain types of developers, maybe to use for testing. It's definitely snappy. I mean, it's GNOME, so I'm kind of used to it because my laptop runs Pop OS, so that's a plus. I did notice I like the fact that it's got the GNOME tweaks installed out of the box. It's even got a couple of extensions already pre-installed on it, which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, I think for what they're going for, I think it works, but I just don't think most like average Linux users are going to have a real need or use for it. But it's definitely fast. Like I'll give them that. It's really fast. Even in the VM, like it's really fast.
So it seems like we're getting a consensus then that, you know, it's maybe not geared towards the general user, but it does seem to be optimized. Now, Rocco, you said you were going to use Phoronix Test Suite. I've seen a bunch of people commenting in the YouTube chat about the claim of being, I don't know if 20% is the right number, but being faster. Was that what you were trying to test out? Is to see
I was just trying to test out if it was going to be, you know, like different from Pop OS, say, and how much of a difference would that be? But like I said, I didn't get very far with the test suite. But, you know, like I'm not sure exactly the relationship between Phoronix and Clear Linux. There has to be some relationship in there somewhere because he very consistently tests it out and checks up on it. So I don't know what's going on there, but
and it could be that claim, maybe. Who knows? You know, that they keep saying that. So
I guess
Yeah.
kind of an easy way to put it is that Phoronix and Intel have always been kind of close with each other, so it's really easy for them to do things like that.
Yep. Yeah, something definitely going on there. Yep. All right. Scrap Jaw is in the house. If he's here.
he may not be back.
He's not back yet. We'll just skip him. He probably didn't try Clear Linux anyway. Yuri. All right. Well, we're going to continue on. Adam, how are you tonight, sir?
Hey, what up?
What up, dude?
I think it's pretty clear that I didn't try the distro. So,
all right, moving
that
on.
happened.
DJ.
Yes.
How are you,
Hey,
sir?
I'm fine, thank you, Rocco. I have been trying it, and I have installed it on my laptop that I can't ever get anything else to run on, and it's been running for about a week. I don't have anything really to add to my comments other than I did mention last week that I did find a telemetry socket open with the last. I got a couple of interesting comments from one of the Intel developers that said, well, you know, if you encounter this, just submit a bug, but it magically got fixed, so it is gone. And
that's good though. That's good.
I also got a comment from another viewer that said that oh, it's fast because they're disabling the Spectre meltdown mitigations, and so I tested that, and that's not true. The mitigations are in place. I did notice that one of the mitigations did fail, and that could be because it could not locate the. It's looking for a specific place for the Linux kernel, and it's not finding it. So I suspect that's probably a false positive.
So it's not intentionally.
Not intentionally, right.
Ah,
but the rest
okay.
I could put the Spectre meltdown checker is the script that I used. It's one of the guys that actually did some of the discovery work with Spectre meltdown. So if you're interested, I could put a link.
Yes, please do.
If you'd like. But that's really, I also installed KDE on it and replaced Gnome. Gnome's not my favorite.
Wow,
either.
that doesn't usually go well when you replace KDE with Gnome, as far as they don't like each other. They don't like playing with each other.
But it seems to work. It seems to work all right. I haven't tried XFCE yet, but that is also one that's available in the bundle. So
that was all just. Sorry, DJ. That the Plasma was just in their repositories.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And there's some instructions on their site if you want to change over to a different desktop. So yeah. So far so good. I don't know if they're going to fight each other down the road, but so far they haven't.
It's good.
So that's all I had. That's all I had, in addition to what I said last week.
No, that's really interesting. Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks for that. Paul, how are you? And you have any further thoughts?
Remember last week I was having problems with my old laptop, so I didn't even try it again. So
gotcha. Yep. Sounds good.
Alrighty, thanks.
Shickle. Oh,
I
got you right in mid.
I kept playing with it, and I did some more like rendering and stuff with it. I figured I'd probably try and actually use it, see how much of a performance difference I would notice with something that's just heavily CPU intensive. And there is a significant difference, I think, when it comes to just hammering the CPU kind of all the time. I don't really think the experience is kind of what I'm looking for as a user. As it's been said, it's not just kind of like a normal user type of thing, but it's really cool to kind of see that kind of proof of concept. This is a really fast and kind of insane level performance, but other than that, I didn't do much else with it.
Yep. All right. Does anybody else have any final thoughts on Clear Linux? All right. That's going to wrap it up for that part. Well, I do want to thank the guys behind Clear Linux and the guys that work on it every day for all of the hard work they put into it. It's not obviously for us, but it's definitely worthwhile for doing. And hopefully some of the things that they are able to do as far as performance can be handed down or handed around to everywhere else as well. So, all right, we have to pick another distro. And as you know, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. We were putting up a vote on the website. And well, it's an actual vote that will stay there, forever, basically. But Eric, it looks like somebody's been gaming the system, don't you think?
It seems a little suspect. Yeah, there's 10 or 15 votes at a time for calculate, all within seconds of each other.
Yeah.
It seems a little.
Calculate Linux got 41 votes. It got 25% of the vote to be put into the random generator. Now, I highly doubt that. Okay, I'm just going to say it. We didn't get 41 votes for Calculate Linux from different people. Just saying. Throwing it out there. Red Hat got 35 votes. TinyCore got 16 votes. Void got 15 votes. So all of these are distros that, maybe we probably would shy away from trying from time to time. We would usually stay towards the Ubuntus and towards the easier distros. I'm not going to take them out of the random generator, but I'm not going to put them in because of the voting. So somehow along the line, we're going to have to perfect the voting system as far as what goes into the random generator. So I did put a few in the random generator now, and I'm not going to tell you which ones they are. But as we go along, I'll let you know what distro, when I get the script set up here, of what distro we're going to pick. But first, I want to go into an email that we got through the website. And this email is from somebody who listens to this show, and I guess listens to it in the podcast form that I put out through the audio only. I go on Sunday and I try to clean up the audio as best as I can without having to re-listen to the whole show for 2 hours. But I clean up the audio and then I put it out as a podcast form, and people listen to it that way. So this is how he ended up listening to it. And this is his email, and he's looking for suggestions. So he says, thanks for the podcast. I love the topics and the people on there. I'm a new listener and I need help. So he just bought an HP ZBook G3. Has an Intel i7, Intel HD Graphics 530, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a 500 gigabyte spinning hard drive. So he bought it from a friend's company for $20, which is a great deal. He installed a Crucial 500 gig SSD for $66, and he installed Zorin OS free version, and so he gets Steam. His question is, how can he make his gaming experience better? He says, I'm a broke gamer. Should I get a discrete card like the NVIDIA Quadro, or should I buy an eGPU box? And which one should he buy if he was going to go with that? has anyone worked on those on Windows or Linux? He already has a RX 480 that he could throw into an eGPU box if he went that route. He can load most of his games running Proton, and the games that he does play is Gas Extreme Guzzlers, Need for Speed, Doom, Dirt Rally, Football 2019, Smashing the Battle, House Flipper, and Tabletop Racing. So,
Rocco, well, I was going to say, if you don't mind, just a second, Thomas.
So hold on 1 second. Let me finish, and then you can go on because it won't. I'll never get back to it. So any thoughts or suggestions is well appreciated, and he wants to get to use this book this HPZ book that he got. And thank you from Albert. All right, so now it's time.
Okay, I think his RX 480 would be his better choice. A Quadro card. The difference between a Quadro card as opposed to a typical gaming card is how the FPS is put through. Quadro card is geared more toward somebody that's doing like design work, workstation type work, that type of thing. Even if the FPS looks like it's rated the same, the difference is on a gaming system, the FPS is put through faster. So if you were to take a gaming card, which I have used in a rendering situation for, let's say, like soft plan for designing homes, and you want to do a flyby or, the 3D walkthroughs, you still potentially could get some stuttering because of how the FPS is put through, because it's a gaming card as opposed to how the Quadro cards or the the AMD Fire Pro cards will work. So to answer his question, I think if he can use a discrete card, even in a separate box, and he's got a RX 480, even though it's an older card, it still will perform better, I think, in his situation.
All right. Anybody else got any thoughts?
So before he puts a dedicated graphics card in an eGPU box, he needs to make sure he has Thunderbolt. Because if he does not have Thunderbolt, there's really no point. Because what
Machine has Thunderbolt.
It does. Okay. Yep. And we know for a fact it's Thunderbolt 3.
Yep.
Okay. So then yes, that would probably work, and I would agree with Joe that the RX card would probably be the best bet. Quadro cards are meant more for, like he was saying, rendering applications such as videos, and I think passing it through to VMs. Whereas the RX card, he's also not going to have to deal with the graphics drivers issues. That being said, I've heard more about NVIDIA graphics cards and eGPU enclosures, and less about AMD graphics cards. I would assume it would work just the same, but I'm not sure. He's also going to have to take into account that by having an eGPU in a dedicated graphics card enclosure, you're not going to be able to carry that around as easily as just the raw laptop. You can, you totally can. It's just more you have to carry around, more cables, more weight, all of that. So I would say if he does get an eGPU, it would be a better idea for him to just leave that at home as like a battle station kind of thing. Plug that in, and his secondary monitor is plugged into that, and then you can just plug it in game when he gets home, and then when he's on the go, he just unplugs that one cable and goes. And if the laptop is capable of charging from Thunderbolt as well, he can have it charging from that as well, and that's one cable for everything. So in that case, he has a great setup ready for him. He just needs to get that external GPU enclosure.
And now, as far as brand goes, as far as the eGPU enclosure, there's a couple of them that I have researched in the past, and they get pretty much high reviews. And Razer makes one, and so does Alienware. The average cost, he said he was a broke gamer, so the average cost for these things is they're enclosures that include the power supply, things like that, but not the video card. They range in price, and they're roughly about $250 a piece. So I'm not sure if that is something that's feasible for him, since he said the funds were kind of tight.
Right.
But I mean, if it's something that he has to have, then you definitely save up the money if you can and get either a Razer or a Alienware version. Also, like Thomas was saying, this is not going to be something he's going to be carrying around. I mean, they're quite bulky. It's basically, it's going to have one of them's going to have I think one of them's a 550 watt power supply, so it's a hefty power supply because it's it's going to need it to power the cooler and the video card and the things like that.
Wow, I didn't realize all that went with it.
Yeah, it's an actual enclosure. It's kind of like, it's not like a hard drive enclosure where you just set the hard drive in and plug it in USB or whatever where you're going to go. This thing is actual, has to be able to drive the power supply, not the power supply, excuse me, drive the video card, because it's not going to be plugged into a PC. It's external,
Right.
so it has to have the source, and so it's going to be probably 5-6 pounds. It's probably going to weigh more than his laptop does. So it's going to be quite hefty, and it's not something he's. I mean, he can take it to like a LAN party if he's going to hang out with his friends and they're going to play games or something. But to carry on a daily, if that was his plan, then I would recommend saving up for something with a beefier video card in it than
Well,
the
he
bigger
said
one
he can
has.
play the games. He just can't play them on good settings. Like he doesn't get a lot of.
Gotcha.
And he just. I guess basically what he's asking is, what's his best route, or is there a best route with that particular computer for him to get better FPS?
I mean, you could try. Honestly, you can try. I've never actually used one of those enclosures myself because I don't game on laptops. I prefer the beefier desktop because you can, obviously it's the components are not integrated and they're not onboard graphics like a lot of the cheaper laptops that are like the ones I use for testing for Linux. Now, gaming laptops, if you're planning on gaming a laptop, then that's $1,600 or more for a decent laptop that can run the games at a decent settings. Even high settings, it's going to be hard, not just on the GPU, but it's going to be hard on the CPU when you get depending on what you said it was an i7, but and you're gonna have to factor in heat for long-term gaming at higher settings. It's going to be one of those catch-22 things. He can try it, but is it really worth it to him to try it in the long run? To beef up the settings. He's got to look at it from the standpoint: is it something he really needs? Because if he's, like I said, money's tight, then he might want to consider keeping what he has, and and save up over time, so he doesn't really put himself out, so to speak, trying to buy something that he may not necessarily need.
But is the utility of having an external GPU something that's attractive, because then you're not so much tied to the system, because as long as you have a Thunderbolt port, it's usable wherever, right? And then you can always upgrade the card as well. So if that enclosure, yeah, it's a high upfront cost, but long run, it does sort of unshackle you from, well, I need a beefier laptop, or I need a.
That's true.
Does anybody have any experience with using a box like that?
I do.
And
the Razer core, and it works. Especially now that Thunderbolt support is more baked in, especially on the GUI level. In Gnome, you've got your Thunderbolt settings there to control those devices. The reason I didn't get the Alienware core is because the connector they used was different, and I wasn't entirely sure if it would work. I've heard that it does, but I'm not entirely sure what they're using over that port. So that's the only reason I didn't get it, but it should work theoretically. It's kind of the same experience as switching between your dedicated and internal GPUs in regards to controlling it. When you have it hooked up to your eGPU and you want to run programs via the dedicated GPU, you basically, run whatever environment variable it is. I believe it's DRI prime at the beginning of whatever you're trying to run, and it will just try and put it on the external GPU rather than the one that's on the laptop GPU. Like it works. There are kind of like edge case issues where very specific gaming experiences in certain environments have like weird stuttering issues, but most of those issues were fiddled out fairly early on. It's been a fairly good experience with an XPS and GTX 2070, I believe. So
it is a I was trying to look at him working with what he had. It's still going to be probably a lesser expense to him to try something like that. Now, that being said, do you take that money and just put it into your little jar and start saving up to maybe get a better system in the long run? Because the thing is, anytime you're running, here's another example. When you take a dedicated card, and anytime you see a system built and you're looking at the PCIe slots that they're being put into, the top one has the most amount of lanes. You go into a lower slot, you're not going to get the same performance, even directly into a motherboard. Now you're talking about something, even though it's Thunderbolt 3, it's still over a cable. Yes, you can get decent performance. You're still not going to get the same performance as if you plug a card into the 16 lane, slot of a PCIe on a motherboard. So to me, I guess it's going to decide, do you just have a little patience, live with what you have, start pooling your money, and try to buy a better system for yourself in the long run? Or if you want to do something now, work with what you have and then buy the enclosure and live with the results you get. Either way, the results you get are probably still going to be better than trying to do something on the internal, integrated card.
Scrapjaw, you posted a buyer's guide. Is this something you're familiar with?
I was just a link that I figured I'd throw in the chat for you guys to look at if it was something, because I've looked at these things in the past, but I've never bought one.
Okay.
If it's any of any use, Martin Wimpress of Ubuntu Mate, I think, also tested the Razer Core.
He had a
few
couple
tweets
of them
about that.
actually.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
They do work well for what they are. We'll say that much.
That's the point I was making, though, because I think if you focus so much on getting a laptop that's specifically built for gaming, you're giving up a lot in terms of portability, battery life, ergonomics, things like that. Whereas, separating concerns in a way. So I think for me, if I was looking for a solution like this, it would be less about getting a giant hulking laptop that can handle this and more about, and this is almost like you almost want to say there's a play for streaming here as well, right? Where you're now removing the need for the hardware locally and streaming either from another computer or from a service, something like that. So I think there's lots of options, but with the hardware he has, that's kind of the only thing I'm hearing us say is the external enclosure.
Yeah, it's going to be the external enclosure, probably the best bet. Again, like you were saying, Eric, you don't want to go with the big bulky laptop. Now, of course, we're assuming that this person wants the ability to be mobile for while he's gaming. Now, if that's not the case, then he might even want to save up, in the long run, save up money for a decent gaming desktop. If he's not caring about the mobile aspect of it, we can throw the laptops. And this is just speculation in the future and stuff like that. What I would do is save up money for a decent gaming desktop. I just built one for somebody that was in another stream I watched, and he needed help, so I guided him through it. And it was like a $1,200 desktop that guide him so he could as a streaming / gaming desktop. Now I know this person probably doesn't have the funds for it right now, but in the long run, it may be better to quote unquote future proof his gaming experience to consider building his own gaming desktop if that's feasible over trying to get one of these boxes and then throw a better video card in it over time.
Yeah, Big Pod.
I have a laptop that is gaming laptop, and I gotta say, heat and all that is killing the system a lot, and battery life drops down quickly. That's one of the things I wouldn't recommend gaming system for a laptop any day. One of the problems is internal GPU. It heats up really much. If the person doesn't want portability or doesn't need portability, I would say he should go for the desktop. You can get decent gaming desktops, of course, with a medium, maybe with some lower end games, high settings, which is in most cases enough. A 1080p, you can get some from $500 to $800. You can get decent gaming PCs for just for gaming, and I built one for one guy for I believe 500 euros. It was a gaming PC that he runs. I believe it was 1050 Ti, some i5 and 8 gigs of RAM, and it was a nice gaming PC.
All right,
So,
Thomas. I'm sorry, Big Pot. Did you have anything else?
in my opinion, he shouldn't go for laptop for gaming in anyway, because in my opinion, I made a big mistake at that time when I bought this laptop.
So I was going to add, and Jason reminded me of this. What he could do is buy that eGPU enclosure and stick his AMD card in it for now, and have the intention of building his own PC later, assuming that's something he would be interested in doing. And as he's buying the pieces for that desktop, he could buy a new graphics card that's more powerful than what he already has and just replace it in the eGPU enclosure, be using it already. And then when he has the desktop fully built, just stick the old GPU back in the eGPU enclosure, stick the new GPU in the desktop. There you go. And you can have the best performance at all times. It's not the most feasible idea financially, but
He did say that he was a broke gamer, so I don't know if that's going to be.
I kind of like this presumption that he is financially stable enough to save up for these expensive luxury items. When he spent $20 on a laptop, it seems kind of silly to oh, we'll just save up to buy this, save up to buy that. Presumably he could be living paycheck to paycheck and barely scraping by, and $20 laptop is just kind of what it's at, right?
But my
So what do you
question is-
suggest, Adam?
Just go get like a used enclosure off eBay, and then call it a day. Simple as that. That's really it. Like if you really don't have the money, you shouldn't even try to ruin yourself trying to buy these build an expensive desktop or buy an expensive gaming laptop or whatever. Just buy the cheapest used, snipe somebody out on a bid or something, and just do what you already have the card, right? So
right
there you go.
Yep. I mean, that laptop is actually pretty decent.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
and
pretty
especially for the price you got it for. I mean,
yeah,
that's a win there. So I'd count your wins and go for another easy one and get the external enclosure myself if you're going to scrape
The only other thing
to save
that
for anything.
I would be worried about with the laptop, I don't know what it looks like. I didn't look it up, but a lot of if it's one of the thinner laptops.
No, this is like a.
It's like a workstation.
Yeah, it's
kind
a
of thing.
workstation replacement sort of.
Oh, okay, so
line.
then he probably wouldn't have to worry about thermal
No.
throttling too much.
No, I think it's a fairly beefy machine. Enterprise type thing.
All right, Scrap, you had something?
Yeah, he has a dedicated GPU for a desktop. So the only information we don't know is if he already has a desktop. So I've been asking this the whole time while you guys are talking about what to do with the laptop situation. I'm like, why does he have a desktop GPU without a desktop? Which is the assumption of the whole conversation right now. So he probably has that, is my assumption at this time. So when I think of having a GPU or a laptop with a pretty beefy CPU, you could use that CPU power with a capture card if you wanted to stream or something like that. Or if you wanted to just use it as like a low-end gaming when he has to on the go, like some people have said. I think about utilizing a laptop like that more for audio, though. I have my gaming stuff here at the house, so that's where my brain goes.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much answers what we can answer. Thank you, Albert, for the email and the good conversation. I hope that helps you out. And yeah, keep sending emails in. You keep sending emails in. We'll keep talking about them. Before we go on to the next thing, I guess we got to get the distro thing out of the way. So I'm going to open up the terminal here, and we're gonna find our distro suggestions and see what we come up with. All right, so I'm not gonna look here because I'm afraid of the distros that I put on that list.
told you to go with the spinning wheel, Rocco.
Okay,
Must be tiny
so
core.
the distro random generator, and you can thank Thomas for this one, picked out Qubes OS.
This is going to be interesting.
Let's do it.
What is this?
Qubes OS.
Oh, bring on the cubes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
t-
a
I have
private,
no idea what that is.
I even tried to like do it a couple times to see if it would change, and it didn't change. It still
It didn't change. It's not very
Unless it
random.
has the same seed number every time.
It has no votes on the website.
That's why he chose it.
No, it was in. All I did was take out Clear
Cubes.
Linux from the picks that were in there already from the last week, and ran the generator. So, yeah, Qubes OS.
So
Eric?
let me just read the overview. What is Qubes OS? It's a free and open source security oriented operating system meant for single user desktop computing. It leverages Zen-based virtualization to allow for the creation and management of isolated virtual machines called cubes, which are also referred to as domains or compartments. And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but that gives you sort of an idea of
Sounds so simple.
Well,
Yeah.
it kind of sounds like Fedora's blue. Was it Silver Blue?
Silver Blue.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, yes, in that it's compartmentalized, but this is more. I mean, so I mean, I'm not going to get in. The Silver Blue is more of a fixed OS tree, and then you've got Flatpak on top of it. Where this is, if you look at this diagram, it'll actually kind of explain a little more. It's interesting. This is actually something that is compelling. It doesn't look simple.
That diagram looks awesome.
It does.
Well,
it's very diagrams. You know, I mean, come on, who doesn't love a diagram?
Right.
So,
I mean, really, who doesn't love a diagram? Well, look.
Is this the Linux?
Can you put a link in the chat for everybody?
I can.
I believe this is the distro that Edward Snowden recommends for security.
Put one in our chat.
And the way I think is you're supposed to use it is you're supposed to compartmentalize depending on the activity you're doing. That way, if you're doing something not secure, you don't risk anything else. And you can, I think you can either start like a Debian VM or a Fedora VM
or Windows,
I guess.
So basically,
kinda
what
see
you're doing is you're booting into a system, and then whatever you're opening up is in a virtualization container.
Yes.
So if your system where you test on doesn't have virtualization extensions, don't even run it on there.
Yeah, good point.
Also, I believe that the hardware requirements in terms of memory and whatnot is significantly more than your average distro. I think I recommend either 4 or 8 gigs of RAM to
I think
use
you can
it.
start it
So,
on 4, but you are going to be kind of limited.
Yeah, if you start to do a whole lot, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even have 4 gigs available. So
It's a cool concept. It really is. It's very it's like installing a Type 1 hypervisor and then using that to be your desktop. So I mean, it's kind of cool, and you can sandbox things. It's pretty neat.
It's
But-
probably not something you're going to give to a new user.
Yeah, let's look at looking at the FAQs. Can I watch YouTube videos? Yes. Can I run applications like games which require 3D support? No. We do not provide OpenGL virtualization for cubes.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Tom from Switch to Linux had a few videos regarding Qubes OS quite a little while ago. So I think those still probably relevant today. It wasn't that long ago, but maybe last year sometime.
Okay,
So you might want to look him up.
The system requirements, 64-bit Intel or AMD, 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of space, and legacy boot mode. Ooh, that could be a problem.
Legacy.
Oh, no, wait. Required for 3.0 and earlier. UEFI supported beginning with 3.1.
Okay.
We're on 403, so that's all right.
Recommended fast SSD, Intel IGP, Intel VTX or VTD, So yeah, you're gonna have to, like Big Pod said, you're gonna have to have a pretty good machine, and it's gonna have to have virtualization extensions and all of that stuff. So
it also mentions on here, Eric, under the Qubes release 4.x,
mm-hmm.
NVIDIA GPUs may require significant troubleshooting.
I think we just found a use for that laptop of the broke gamer in the last section.
And then AMD GPUs have not been formally tested, but the Radeon RX 5 earlier generally work well. So just something to think about.
This could be an interesting 2 weeks, Rocco.
Yeah. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate it.
I think I won't be doing it.
In my defense, if you just waited longer between runs, it would have probably given you something else.
Well, we can
that's it. Just wait longer
and try again.
It's called entropy.
Well, we could always override it, override the generator. That was, but
yeah.
I don't know. I think why don't we just give it a try and see what happens.
This was inevitable. It was going to happen. It was always going to happen. This
is
inevitable.
We're not always going to get to try distros that are fun to try out. You know what I mean? Sometimes we got to try out things that maybe aren't so easy and fun. If you don't want to, you don't have to try it out.
There's a hardware compatibility list. I'll put a link in there.
Yeah, I saw that.
So my system
is this the Rubik's Cubes of Linux, is it?
And the plus side of this that you guys are not thinking of, if we try Qubes and like there's only 2 people that try it out, then that means we got an extra 50 minutes to talk about other stuff. So, it is what it is.
Point.
Well, so what Rocco's saying is nobody do it.
No, what I'm saying is the people that want to do it are more than welcome to do it. I will be doing it. But the people that don't want to, don't.
I wonder if you put on a Pine Book.
I know DJ will, right? DJ, you're gonna try this, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
See, DJ's up for anything, dude.
Well, Tony's probably already installed it.
Tony,
he's working on it. Look at his face.
Look at that face.
Yeah, he's there.
It's 4.83 gigabytes, so it might take a while to download.
Yes, and it's messing with your connection too.
Yeah, he's killing his internet with it. Yep.
Well, I have to say, whoever was gaming the poll for Calculate is laughing right now because they.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good thing it wasn't Calculate that came up in the random
It's
generator.
probably the Qubes guys.
Calculate might be easier.
No.
Calculate will be definitely.
So Qubes OS will be the distro challenge for the next 2 weeks, and we'll go from there. There was another item that I wanted to bring up, and this was a YouTube comment, and it was kind of comical because it was on a old KDE customization video that I had made, and it's from a YouTube guy called Very Blam, and he says he's got mixed emotions. He's ecstatic that it says ecstatic you've led me to the vastly superior menu, but furious knowing I probably right-clicked that icon at least 83 billion times and never paid heed to the massive gold star alternatives button. So he didn't realize that you could right-click and hit alternatives for the menu buttons. So he said thank you for that. And he's got 3 questions that he asked. Has nothing to do with that video, but questions he asked, and I wanted to bring them up to you guys. But then a day later, he commented on the same comment. He says, although I just realized this video is over 3 years old, and my subsequent research indicates that you're almost definitely still alive 4 days ago. Much to my relief and presumably yours. So, his attention to detail is great. But anyway, he's got 3 questions, and I figured I'd bring them up to you guys, and we can talk about them. So the first one is, if you could tell me why my resolve.conf file needs the DNS server line manually added after every reboot. So I assume he's running KDE. It doesn't say what distro he's running. But obviously it was on the KDE customization video, so that's a little hint there. But, okay. Why? Why does that happen?
It's because resolve conf gets overridden.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you can't actually overwrite the overriding. If you do Chatter plus I think it is, or Chatter minus I, one of the two, and just give it the path to resolve conf. It will never be able to overwrite it. Now, there is another file you can go edit that you can put that setting into, and from then on, that will be your DNS. I think, don't quote me on this. That's hosts.conf, or your host file, whatever it's named in your distro. But I'm not 100% sure about that one.
Eric?
I've run into this specifically with VPNs and things like that, where excuse me, the DNS wasn't working for me, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I had to go and look at resolve.config, and sometimes it's a link to another file, sometimes it's the file itself. Like Thomas says, it gets overwritten, so it can be very dependent on your distro and how your network is set up. So it's kind of hard, where it's a shot in the dark to sort of tell him, hey, this is how you fix it. If I got that comment, I would just have to say I need a little more info.
Okay. If he uses most distros nowadays, they use what's called network manager. So maybe he has in network manager DNS line not written in. So maybe that could, after every reboot, override the DNS.
Mm-hmm.
All right. His second question is, he asks if there's a recommended low memory, your system's about to freeze monitor / alarm warning solution. So is there an app out there that will pop up a warning or a buzzer or something to say he's really on low memory?
I think NetData has alerts. Might be
I'm
an option.
sure there is. Yeah, I mean, my mind went to scripting something with like free, and then if it's less than a certain amount, being able to pop up. But that's, I mean,
and
that's
then you
not,
have to have like a timer on it and everything.
Yeah,
but yeah.
You could do watch free.
Watch.
That?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say look into something like NetData. You'll get a little more granular information from that than just running, a watch on free.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he doesn't say what technical level he's at.
NetData is pretty easy. It's like they have like a script. You just run it, installs it. So
I think, and the other thing I would check is if I was on Plasma at the moment, I would just go to widgets and see if there was already something out there, maybe that was a monitor type thing.
I think there is. You can add it to the system tray, so you can watch the memory usage. I know there is for CPU type stuff too.
Yeah, so if you're not comfortable with command line, then see if there's in the Plasma widgets.
There is if I remember correctly, there is a widget for monitoring the memory. I don't know if it has an alarm on it though, or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the last question is how to block all remote login access, login servers, SSH, because I will never use it.
Disable SSH.
Yeah, just disable the service or uninstall it.
So what, systemctl?
Open SSH.
Sudo systemctl disable ssh.service.
Okay.
Yeah, you can either disable it and leave it in place or just uninstall it. Some things might have it as a dependency, so you may not be able to uninstall it.
And enabling your firewall is a good approach too. Maybe both, depending on what distro you are, and figure out firewall D or UFW or something like that.
I think depending on the distro, it defaults to open though for some reason. I'm not sure why, but UFW rules.
UFW does not. I know that for a fact. You enable UFW and you will have no incoming connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some distros just have it wide open.
Right.
Again, and this is all distro dependent.
Yep.
I mean, the same solutions will work on any distro because they're all using the same software. It's just all configured differently.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a PAM solution for that?
Yes, you could probably. Well, that would only disallow PAM authentication. You could still, you're still leaving the service open, and potential for other avenues.
I mean, if he's worried about that, then I would just say it's probably not a bad idea to be running a firewall anyway,
right?
And just leaving the ports they want open. But you're the way to actually solve it is to disable the service or get rid of the service.
Yeah, that's the easiest.
Yep.
Dolphin has had a few things to say in chat with, especially the first question as well, just in case people didn't notice.
I didn't notice.
Well, he should be on here, and then he could he could tell us.
Right? I didn't see it. All right, so that's the end of that. If you want have any questions you want to ask, you can contact us through the website. You can put a YouTube comment in, you can send an email, and we will talk about it and see what we come up with. Before I go on to the next thing, because this might be a long, lengthy discussion, does anybody have anything they want to talk about?
Real quick, I wanted to bring up, I know Gnome doesn't get a lot of love, but one of the things that we constantly harp on them about is the taking things away. And if you saw that in 3.3.6 that's coming out, I think in a month or so, they're actually adding back in some things like desktop font, respecting your settings, and also an extensions manager, a native extensions manager.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they've finally said that I mean, it's not a secret, right? Most people are going to run even just a few extensions, and most distributions, even if it's a very stock GNOME experience, there's usually at least a couple extensions installed by default. There's some that are in the repositories. So if you're on Ubuntu, for example, you don't even have to go out to the GNOME extensions website. You can install a lot of extensions right from the repository. So it's not like it's a secret thing, but yeah, they are. I'm looking at an article from OMG Ubuntu, and yeah, shell improvements, do not disturb toggle. So have that right in there. So there's an extension for that people use already. So they're bringing that in. New extensions app, new lock screen, new dialogues, password
When's this coming
peeking.
out, Eric?
It's still in development, but I think they were saying sometime like maybe April timeframe. I think March or April.
Probably
it's going
not.
to be they're going to have it in place for 2004.
Oh, okay. That was what my question was.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
anyway, I don't know if anybody cares, but I thought it
well,
was interesting.
How many people? Well, wait. How many people here run GNOME? Wow.
That's actually not bad. It's more than I expected.
How many extensions do you guys run?
5.
That you guys that run GNOME, how many extensions do you run?
None.
Adam runs none. Big Pop runs
Yeah.
4. Let's see. How many extensions do I run? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
He's got 7.
6, 7.
I have 6. I have 6 running. So I have
8, 9, 10, 11.
clipboard indicator, dash to dock, GS Connect, case status notifications. So I have a tray. No annoyance, so that I don't get that your Windows ready thing. And then there's one called sound input and output device chooser, which just gives you a nice little drop down.
That's a must-have.
Yeah, so that's it. I mean, it honestly 5 or 6 extensions, big deal.
Dynamic panel transparency is one I gotta have. Sorry.
Probably 3 or 4 for me. I think dash to panel and the arc menu is quite two very good extensions.
That gives you something kind of like a Zorin look.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely, yeah. And
They work
it's a good
together
work
now, don't they?
Yeah, the latest version, Shickle, yeah.
Yeah, they work really well together. And the arc menu, I must say, has some very, very good swap out menus. So they're starting to put so many menu features in there now.
Wait, where did I read, and I can't remember where it was. I just read it today or yesterday about the whisker menu getting a new look, like a switcher.
Yeah, I was saying that too.
That you can do an icon view basically from it. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's what like the whisker menu is needed for, I don't know, ever. I mean, it's a great menu, but still looks like 1998.
All I know is I've been doing XFCE development this week, and it was actually super easy.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, what do you got?
Slight change of subject, if no one minds. DT, Derek, put out a video the other day about doas versus sudo. And I was just curious if sudo was actually on the way out to be replaced from a BSD, a free BSD utility like doas. And he was claiming that it wasn't bloated as sudo is, and I don't know how true that is, because he only had one thing in his configuration as opposed to the sudo that has about 500 things in the configuration, most of which are commented out.
Is there an elevator pitch like advantage of why you'd use one over the other?
Well, I think the title
that's
said.
what I'm trying to figure out.
I think the title said don't, or sudo's bloat, use doas or something like that. So
yeah.
Okay, a non-DT elevator pitch.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out is it worth, changing over from sudo to doas, or if it's just something to make a video about. I don't know.
Well, you certainly have to make a conscientious effort to switch, because just about every distro has sudo, or many do anyway. So you certainly have to
And I'm gonna be
conscientiously
real
test.
with you guys for a moment here. I've never typed sudo in and been like, "Wow, sudo's running so slowly. It must be.
Yeah.
It feels so bloated." Like,
I think his point is that there's so much cruft around how it works with permissions and all of the capabilities that maybe that's what I was looking for. Is like, does bloat mean that there's less security exposure, and is this a reaction to the recent issue that came up? And what's the motivation?
What's the
I
reason?
specifically mentioned that. He
because
specifically
it's
mentioned
so
that.
integrated into our environment. Like, sudo is so tied into so many different things that what seems like bloat is probably just it working with everything.
Well, you have to have it, because you're not going to using root is ridiculous. It's a terrible security, flaw. Not flaw, but it's a terrible security practice. And if you're on your own desktop, okay, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world, but you can destroy your system pretty easily. And if you're on a server or anything that's publicly facing and you have root available, like, you're just asking for trouble. So sudo fills that void. Yeah.
Are you talking running root as in like typing su and running as root? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, not using a separate unprivileged account and then using sudo to elevate your privilege.
So just a side comment, Department of Defense does not use sudo. They recommend that you go with ACLs to control access to the box for a super user, and create accounts that run under that. Sudo, getting rid of it would be a bad idea, because most of your installation scripts would probably break. Particularly those where you don't need sudo in order to start the install, that switch midstream and pop up and ask you for an authorization, and that uses sudo on the background. But anyway, just a couple of comments and things.
All right. Mitchell in chat says DT is correct, but he's also going for the memes.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with sudo per se, but no reason to switch, in my humble opinion. I use doas on my OpenBSD machines. So, all right, Joe, what do you got?
I just wanted to comment a little bit about Mint. I know you guys talked about it last week. I've been on it for about a year now, and I really do enjoy it, but there have been starting to get to be a quirk with it again. Like, I can't get to the 5, their supported latest kernel would be the 5.3, and it won't let, I like to suspend my computer at night, and it just won't work correctly. I've tried to go on Linux Mint's website. I've signed
Joe,
up.
It won't work correctly on the kernel you're on, and you want to update the kernel? Is that what
No,
you're saying?
when I went to 5.3, it won't work. So I had to revert back to the 5.0 kernel. And I don't understand why, because it's not like the system's not anything special. It's a Ryzen, it's a newer system, all that. But I'm starting to think it's got to be something hardware related. And yet when I did reach out to, I think it was on a GitHub forum, I had somebody answer and say, well, it doesn't happen on their laptop. Well, that's not the same comparison. So that made me think, well, is it a hardware related thing? So I've tried to sign up on Mint's website to go on their forum to do a report to them or try to get some kind of information. And it keeps, like, the sign up won't work on there. I don't know what it is that. So even trying to get a hold of them that way. And I thought, well, do I just update the kernel again and then do an actual kernel bug report and see if that happens? I don't know what to do at this point. I am this close to I haven't been tempted to hop in a long time. And I was going to say, you'd be surprised at what I'm thinking, but you're talking about Gnome, and I actually have been thinking about either going back to Pop OS or Ubuntu, vanilla Ubuntu. But
so does it work on the 5.0?
Yeah, 5.0.0041. But if you go to the 5.3, I can't remember what it was, 4896 or whatever it was, their latest one. And I've even gone into, I don't like using the UUKU because, you run a risk with that. But I thought, let me download that again and maybe even try just a completely different kernel like the LTS, the 5.4. And it didn't like my graphics. So I thought, well, I'm not going to mess with this. And I'll just go back to what works. But the problem is this 5.0 kernel support ends this month. So either I wind up staying on an old kernel, or I try to find out why this just won't work, or I just basically switch distros altogether, which I really am not looking to do. I don't have the second drive in here anymore. I'm going to be getting another new one. And I may very well go back, like I said, to Ubuntu or Pop again, because I did like those. Because the one thing I have to say about those is, they're running the later packages, the later kernels, everything about them is more current with, I think, far fewer problems. And I know that's one of the complaints people have always said about Mint is because they tend to lag behind, but they tend to do what's stable. And I don't like the phrase when I always say it just works, because it doesn't always just work. It's been working. I finally got past the freeze issues by doing, the BIOS updates. And that seems to be better, other than the one time when I did an oops, not realizing that my battery was dying and I thought it was freezing again. But now I've got this kernel issue, and I don't know where this is coming from. It shouldn't be this way, because even that one's only supported till August, that their latest kernel. So I think that's one of the flaws within Mint. And I don't know why I can't get on their forum. I've tried emailing them, whatever. It should have been a simple sign up. It says it wants to send you a notification. It never comes. So I finally am throwing my arms up. But I was just curious if anybody else experienced that too. But because you talked about it last week and I was under the weather and didn't want to come on, I thought maybe it'd be something worthwhile talking about now, if anybody had any input.
Well, I have not had any. I've not tried Linux Mint in a long time, which is kind of why I brought it up last week. But there's a few other people I know have had issues with Mint kernels, including a couple, Sedgwick in chat. I know he has as well. But I can't tell you, what to do in that situation, though.
Yeah.
So, just for what it's worth, if you're looking for that Cinnamon environment on an Ubuntu base, maybe give Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix a look. Just saying. It's not Mint. It doesn't have all the tools and all that stuff, but it is Cinnamon on Ubuntu. So
I don't have to have necessarily the Cinnamon environment. The whole reason what drew me over this, I was on Mate before this, was because of its polish. And like I said, a lot of the ease of use of things. But I'm looking for something that is going to be as stable as possible. And I did have Pop OS on another drive on here for quite some time, although I didn't go into it super often. It always seemed to work really well on here. So I would, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to lean towards something that's more current with everything, and I think is a little bit more well supported. I still think that there's, as much as I love Mint, I've been on it a year. I do still think that there's some flaws here that they just don't ever seem to get past. And you can read thread upon thread upon thread for multiple versions of it that the same problem seems to exist, and they never seem to get it corrected. And I don't want to sound like I'm bashing on them, but I've stuck it out. I think a year has given this a very, very strong effort, and I do like this. but it's the one thing that's I'm kind of getting tired of it is what it is. It's not so much the idea of just feeling the hop. It's the idea of just getting burned out on it, you know, so.
There's a, sorry, before we move on, I just had a funny.
Do it, brother.
Did you guys see this story about there's a UK police organized crime unit, Midlands Regional Organized Crime Unit was saying that kids using Kali Linux are the next generation hackers.
Yes, I did see that.
I thought that was just, I'm curious to know if this is just them misunderstanding or if these kids literally were trying to like use it to hack things.
I think it's more of a headline, clickbait type of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, Eric, I think that the police department released a clarification about that.
Did they?
And said
Okay.
that wasn't actually from them. That it was a company that they had contracted with that put something out. So I don't think it was actually endorsed by the official police department.
Gotcha. Okay.
And real quick here, I want to go back to I think it was Joe there. He was talking about the Linux kernel thing. I was looking at the Linux Mint forums, and apparently there's quite a few people that are having that issue. And a lot of them, what they were saying is to go off the 5.0 or 5.3 kernels and use the 4.15 LTS kernels.
Oof.
Yeah,
I
saying
can't
because
go back that far.
Yeah.
Because of my hardware, it's not a good idea to go back beyond 5. So, and 5's working fine.
Yeah, because apparently there's quite a few people that are having that issue with the suspend not working in that particular kernel.
Okay.
I don't know,
So-
Joe. Ubuntu Mate is going to be coming out 2004 in a few months.
Yeah, no, I'm hiding my time here.
And probably pretty smooth upgrade even if you installed 1910.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah.
What's
I
the
have a quick-
advantage of? Sorry, I just wanted to know what's the advantage of suspend anyway. It just keeps your computer on, but
It's minimally powered. Yeah, Colin, it's minimally powered. So all I have to do is come in, hit the enter button on my keyboard, and it literally will instantly wake up. And what I've noticed with this is if I put the latest kernel in it, I'll hit enter and it'll either just hang there for a good half a minute before it comes on. If it comes on, you'll have this black screen not knowing if it's doing anything, or when it does come on, it seems to come on much slower, or it just throws a bunch of errors, like freeze errors. So there's something that's really a problem in it. And it's interesting because, again, this ends this month, and then the next jump is to the 5.3 kernels. It's like you don't have any in-betweens to do it. So,
How big is your swap file, Joe?
that's a good question, but I've got 32 gigs of RAM in this machine, so I'm not necessarily that concerned about it.
No, your swap
But the file itself, yeah.
Your swap file is where the Hibernate goes. So
Yeah, I think out of the box, isn't it normally 2 gig? But I haven't checked in a while to see if maybe, and that did cross my mind too, to wonder if the swap file was acting up there. If I just didn't have
Wait, are you suspending or hibernating?
I'm not fully hibernating. I'm just suspending. So there is a difference there too.
True.
Yeah, and the only reason is because even though suspend puts everything in theory to sleep, so your spinning drive. I do have a spinning drive for storage. I'm trying to keep the wear down on that drive. That is a 6-year-old drive, but when you're doing a full boot from completely off is different than when you're doing a minimal power up. It's less invasive to the drive, and that's the main reason why I do it too. Plus, it also, I clean my system a good couple of times or more a year just to check them. Usually they're not hardly dirty at all. And part of it, I think, is because it's a filtered system, but also because shutting it off or at least minimally powering it down also makes a difference in how clean the system will stay too.
All
right.
I have a quick one too, Rocco.
Do it, man. Do
Just
it.
kind of a quick announcement. Speaking of Mate, reminds me that Martin Wimpress put out a announcement on the Ubuntu forums and asking for folks to do some Steam testing on 2004. And I know a lot of us here in the group are Steam users and have fairly decent machines. So
Can't. We're trying out Qubes.
Okay. Well, I'll post that link in the YouTube chat for folks to go check it out.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks for the Qubes. Yes, that's great, Dan. I didn't remember that he did put that out, but he did ask for help. And we get kind of like the bad rap here all the time because we're checking out the Ubuntus all the time and everything. But this is part of it, like part of the beta testing.
Well,
is
it
something
filters
that
it's not just Ubuntu, right?
Right.
Hey, Rocco, speaking of Ubuntu, I was actually going to ask Dan about the 2004 testing and daily builds and all that. Like, where are we at with that? If you give a 2-minute kind of.
Yeah, get right in there and test them. There's still a lot of changes. Feature freeze or the Debian import freeze is happening next week. So there'll still be a bunch of things that'll be getting merged in from Debian and whatnot, and a lot of changes will be taking place. After that, it sort of settles down a little bit, and it's more focused on bug fixes and whatnot that get reported. So expect a bunch of changes coming in.
All right. When would you suggest the random person start looking at it and maybe giving some feedback?
Yeah, so if you want to look at it from the bug standpoint, I would definitely take a look at it after feature freeze so that those can all get addressed before final release. That's my opinion on it. So, I mean, yeah, obviously you can look at it anytime and report on any bugs, but I would say next end of next week, start to look at things, and then after that, hopefully they can get addressed.
Right.
Well, I believe it was Ron in the chat had said that the 2004s are pretty stable right now for him anyway.
Yeah, they probably are. Like I said, there's still going to be a bunch of things that are getting imported. I know a lot of obviously earlier in the development is a lot more impactful as far as what it's going to break and whatnot. So at this point, it's probably starting to level out just a little bit.
And one last thing before you get to your topic, we had some people asking about POP in the chat, and I know there's some avid POP fans here. Any 30, 60-second why you guys like POP?
Because it's the best ever. No,
that's helpful.
Biased opinion.
Why we like POP? Why I like POP? Look, everything about the whole system. You can't just look at a distro for the distro itself. You have to look at the whole thing, who makes it, what their goals are, and everything involved. And part of that is what System 76 is trying to do as a company. Part of that is the ideas that they have for implementing things, like, say, the NVIDIA ISO versus the AMD ISO or Intel ISO. But as far as the system itself, I think it is GNOME done right. It has the extensions that you need installed, except for I think I installed 3 extensions. But the other extensions, like the Do Not Disturb, is already installed for you. So maybe when the new GNOME comes out, that will be one less extension I have to run. But I think the theming is great. I think the not having to install some of the extra things that you would normally do if you're, say, a gamer, and everything pretty much runs out of the box. Like if you remember trying Salient OS, where Silent tried to put all the back libraries that you needed and everything in there so you could just open up Steam and run it and not have any issues. Those are the things that I like POP for.
Oh, and speaking of Salient, he's got a Plasma version. He's been doing, the reason we haven't heard from Silent in months is because he's had his head down doing a bunch of stuff on Ali's stream the other day. He was on there and Ali was checking out the Plasma version, but he's been doing some work. So expect to see something coming out of Silent pretty soon.
I can't wait to try it.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else got anything?
I mean, I started using POP only because I knew it was really good for the hybrid graphics on my laptop. And I wasn't even like a GNOME fan before that. And for some reason, I still haven't been able to completely put my finger on it, but I think Rocco summed it up best. Like, it's GNOME done so well that like I didn't really like GNOME before, and then I started using Pop, and now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, GNOME is actually kind of cool. And it just kind of happened that way.
All right, so we're going to stick with the Ubuntu theme, and the other week, and we already mentioned one of DT's videos, okay, and it's a shame that he's not here because we're going to mention another one that he put out, and it was called what was it called? About the hate on Ubuntu, basically. And there were a lot of people in the comments. Now, he went on this long string, and you never know when Derek is sarcastic or not. You just listen. But anyway, there's a lot of comments in the comments section of, lambasting Ubuntu. And I went in and I made a comment, and I said how thankful I was for Ubuntu itself, for all of the efforts and the work that Canonical put in. And there were many comments after that, let's just put it that way. And some of them were asking if I was being sarcastic or being joking or whatever. And, then we had a few exchanges back and forth. But what do you guys think about the whole topic that Derek brought up? Why does Ubuntu get all of the hate?
Past decisions, mainly the all the what's it called, Amazon thing. That's one of the reasons. Second is
Big Pod, can you turn your mic up, brother?
Can you hear me any better?
A little bit, yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things is the decisions they made, like the Amazon link in the Unity and the Amazon icon in GNOME. But also one of the things is it is quite famous, popular, and another problem is for people, at least that it is made by some company, someone who isn't a community, someone who isn't just few people throwing it together. It's a proper company, and that's a big problem for many people, and that's why Ubuntu is a devil.
Well, I think you brought up a few points, okay, and some of those happened like years ago, and the whole thing that they're a company is, I get that, I get your point about that, but there are other ones like Fedora and Red Hat and SUSE, and they're all made by companies. They don't get near the hate that Canonical does.
There's Canonical and Ubuntu are just more high profile than Fedora, Red Hat, and all that. Everybody who is in Linux and even outside of Linux knows Ubuntu, and not as many people know Fedora, know Red Hat, especially on outside, and that's why people hate Ubuntu, because it is too well known for their own vision. Basically, because if I don't use it, why should you use it? You are mistaken. That's another mentality of especially Linux users, but IT people in general. My opinion is more worth than yours, basically.
All right, Thomas.
I think a large part of it is because they're just a large company, and a lot of people know who they are. The larger of a project you have, and the more publicly visible it is, the more, I guess you could say, haters you're going to have. If you look at it, there are a lot more haters of Google and Microsoft than there are of Canonical. And that's just simply partially because we don't like a lot of the things that they do, because we can see a lot more stuff that they do bad, but also because they're just straight up a larger companies. And because of that, they do more things, and more of those things can be perceived as being bad. And then even if you do everything right, the larger you are, the more people you're going to have that see it, and the more people you're going to have that don't like what you're doing. So, and the larger you are, the more haters you have, basically. It's proportional. It doesn't matter how many people like you, you're going to have more people that don't like you.
All right, Chris.
Oh, originally, I, from personal experience, I disliked Ubuntu. Didn't really hate it. Disliked it because to me it seemed superficial and kind of kumbaya-ish of calling it Ubuntu, meaning what was it, togetherness or something like that. It just seemed like more of a platitude. It's long since have lost that connotation as far as I'm concerned, but I mean that was my original reason why I was not really feeling the love.
All right, Colin.
Yeah, I have a bit of a theory, Rocco. I'm probably one of those weird people that go around reading comments in videos and YouTube videos. So I seen one guy respond to you. I didn't know it carried on. So,
It did.
it did. Okay, I might have to go and check that out. I think a lot of people are not happy with snaps being installed by default, which is one of the things I've noticed. So they want the choice of what snaps they install. So I think that's put a lot of noses out of joint in that regard. I also think that the snaps is, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the snaps are actually run via a proprietary system. Is that right?
The
The
backend,
server,
the
yeah.
store is proprietary,
Yeah.
but the front end, what you use and what is happening on your system is all open source.
Yes. So I mean, these are just observations I've made from watching videos, looking at comments, reading comments, and I think I've mentioned in a comment somewhere that I do believe that there is a lot of people out there that are true Linux users that just are stuck in their way, that they just want Linux to be the old school Linux rather than just go forward with the new stuff. So, I mean, you do have that as well. So anything that Ubuntu is doing with the snaps and all that seems to throw that out. Although I find them quite handy because it gets rid of that problem you have with all these what can you call it, dependency issues. I mean, which has been a big problem over the years for Linux. So I don't know. I just tend to think there's a lot of people that are just stuck in their ways and they don't want Linux to move forward. I think they want Linux to stay the power user type operating system instead of moving forward for the point and click people. So, and I sort of can understand that, but I can see from point of view of, I'd like to see Linux to be like Windows. I think that's what we all want it to be, is you can point and click. I think that's what
Well,
we
I
all...
think most people, I want to say most people, I think there's a lot of people, Colin, that don't want it to be that point and click.
That's what I'm getting. Yeah, that's what I'm sort of alluding to. I think is it's that, and I don't, and I can sort of see people's point of view from a perspective that I did the hard work. People should do the hard work as well. I sort of tend to disagree with that. I'm happy to help people and get them up there and get them to learn what Linux is all about. But I don't think people should have to suffer like we did. I mean, we really do want it to be install it and use it. I mean, because that's the point we're trying to get at. But I think it's a snap thing that's the biggest thing with Ubuntu, I think, that from my perspective anyway.
All right, I am going to get to everybody with the hands up, but Barb, what do you got?
What I was going to say with what Colin was saying, you know what? Then if they don't like the point and click part of it, then don't use it. I think that even for myself, I can do everything in the command line, but you know what? It's a whole lot easier if I've got some nice little app and I go, oh, there it is, click. And there's nothing wrong with that. And they have the choice to do it with from the command line. So I don't know. And I think it's what other people have said. Ubuntu is one of the larger company, companies that are, developing Linux for people. And I think that's part of it. There's a whole bunch of factors.
All right, Jason.
Well, I think, as the new guy looking in type thing here, we go back to the conversation that we had a few shows ago about elitism amongst Linux users. Ubuntu seems to be the one that, like a lot of people are saying, it's a larger, distro. A lot of people know about. A lot of people heard it because it's easier to use for newer people. And so when the old school Linux users see all these people flocking to Ubuntu because it's ease of use, not necessarily because it's the best distro, the most stable, or snaps, whatever. They go to it because it is easier to install. They go to it because it comes with 99.9% of the stuff they're going to need to just to install it and use it. And a lot of the older like people that use I hate to say Arch and other distros where you actually have to go in. I'm talking pure Arch. I'm not talking like Manjaro or anything like that. When you have to go in and configure it, everything in it. Basically it's a very basic download, and you just add what you need and add what you want that way. So it's not geared for new people. So those are the hardcore Linux users, and they think, well, Ubuntu is not real Linux users compared to what they think it should be, because it is geared more for, I don't know if it's geared more for, but more new people use it because of its ease of use.
Right. Aris?
Well, I've used Ubuntu for a long time. I remember from, I think, the Badger release, which is like 6 or something. I forgot what number that was. I think Ubuntu for a while kind of developed a reputation for making their own things and not contributing to the community. Whether that is actually warranted, I don't know. I remember when they started Upstart, and then they were saying that people didn't like that it was their own thing, that they weren't contributing to systemd, and then they transfer over to systemd. And once they got off GNOME, they went to Unity, and again, their own project, separate from everybody, even though now they're back at GNOME. And it almost seems like all these little things they've gone back on, and they've started contributing a lot more to upstream. But I think that kind of developed a lot of bad will from some people in the community, I think. And I guess people say that the whole Amazon thing, but that seems like such an old thing now.
Yes, it does.
And if I remember correctly, I just want to say, because I don't think I've ever heard anybody say this, the Amazon thing was they would send your search to a server that they would control, and then the server would send the request, would pull the request to Amazon. So your request wouldn't go directly to Amazon. I don't think
correct.
Nobody ever discusses that. They always say that they send it directly to Amazon, but they didn't do that. And I think it's just a little things that kind of snowballed, and that's kind of built this whole bad will towards Ubuntu, I think. Also, there's also the Ubuntu contributor license, which is a whole separate topic, I guess, for some people.
All right, Shickle.
So this is something I've kind of noticed in basically every corner of the community that isn't Ubuntu based, and it's really, I think, any possible excuse you can find to promote your ideology or your preference by tearing down the biggest and easiest target. I go into the Fedora group and it's constant crapping on Ubuntu because whether it be snaps or whether it be quote unquote, they don't contribute to upstream, which might I add, so many improvements to GNOME Shell that every distribution is benefiting from have come directly from Canonical and Ubuntu. So I really think a lot of it is just people don't like something, and they will add that to their list of excuses to complain or hate or do anything they can to make the project they don't use or prefer seem terrible, to make the project that they do use seem like a better alternative. Like, it's just a thing people do, and it's awful and it's horrible.
All right, Adam, why do you hate Ubuntu?
Because it's not a Mac.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Big Pod, go ahead.
I just wanted to say what Barbara said about GUIs and all that point and click. most of those old Linux users have the mentality of what I use is the best, and you should use it too. So if you use GUI, you're wrong because I don't use it and I am right. So since you use GUI, you're wrong. You shouldn't do that, and that's their problem.
Yep.
I'm gonna play the part of Alan Pope a little this evening. He's not here. I'm gonna do a bad job, and I'm not gonna try the accent. But one of the things he and I were talking about a couple weeks ago, I think we were on Telegram, but basically, I'm seeing in the chat people saying like, you know, elementary users, like people using Ubuntu-based distros, hating on Ubuntu. There's something very, very twisted and strange about that. So, I mean, Alan's what prompted our conversation was Alan had made either a response to a tweet or someone had tweeted something about Ubuntu, yeah, whatever, you know, some hate on Ubuntu. And he's like, let me just remind you that all of these distributions have free access to all of our repositories. They build their base on top of our system. They're using our bandwidth, our resources, our packagers, our everything that Canonical puts out there. And then they turn around and slap you in the face. And it's a really weird situation where they are benefiting communities that then openly are hostile to them. It's a very strange situation for me. And you know, look, back in the day when you used Ubuntu or when you used Linux on the desktop, you know, there were some good choices, but it was never easy. And Ubuntu was one of the first experiences I can remember where things just worked. And from that moment on, I had an intrigue around what is Ubuntu? Where is this coming from? Who is this guy, Mark Shuttleworth? And why is this project out there? And have they made mistakes? Yes, but they have the longevity to have had that, you know, opportunity to make mistakes, right? They've continued to do something for 15 years that other distros have. They're not alone in this, but you know, this is a freely available operating system that millions of people have used. And I'm not going to sit here. I mean, I'm an unapologetic Ubuntu fanboy. I just am, because they have ingratiated themselves to me. I've never paid a dime for anything for the last 15 years, and I have had this solid operating system that is generally well thought out, generally does not have major issues, and if there are, I can put in a bug, and they're very receptive. I just don't know what else people want out of something that they haven't paid for. That in most cases they don't even report the bugs. They'll just go, "Oh, this is garbage," and throw it away. Or there's no good point I can make here to convince anyone who doesn't like Ubuntu to like it. All I'm saying is at least have enough understanding and recognition that they have pushed Linux further than what I would say many other distributions have, particularly for ease of use and just putting a USB key, or back in the day a CD, you know, ROM into your computer and having a good experience.
Yep.
So,
all right, DJ, you want to get in?
I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experiences with Ubuntu on ARM. I have been moving. I have about 18 of these machines behind me that are different flavors. They're Raspberry Pis, they're Odroids, some of them are Rock Pros. And some of the issues that I have been running into with using the releases from the vendors has been that the packages aren't in the same version, the libraries aren't in the same version. It makes it very difficult to try to manage this. So I have been moving over to Ubuntu Server for this. Now I know that you guys are talking about Workstation, but my results have been three things. One, the machines are running much faster than the proprietary versions of their code. Second, it solved the problem with the versions and the libraries mismatching between architectures. I run some ARM7, I run some ARM8, I run some ARM64. And the other thing is, even with the GUI, I do run GUIs on a couple of them. I run it on the NVIDIA SOC, and not having any trouble with that one as well. So I don't understand that either. I mean, I don't personally. I do have one machine that I use as workstation on x86, and it is Ubuntu. And my reasons for that is simply because I want to be able. I write software. I want to make sure that it's going to work on a distro that is very popular and is very widely used. I think maybe it's kind of the crab in the barrel kind of thing. When something becomes popular, you have the other guys at the bottom that are trying to drag you back down. And so I wish, I mean, I don't think it's a good idea to be 100% behind just one vendor because Linux is all about choice. But by the same token, I don't think it's fair to tear them down either. I know I've made some negative comments about Ubuntu in the past as well. But overall, my experiences with a server, thumbs up. It's great. I will never go back to the vendor built distros again for ARM. So that's all I wanted to say.
Very nice. Very nice. Barb, you wanted to get in?
I think basically everybody said whatever it was I was going to say. And Eric, don't feel bad. There's nothing wrong with being an Ubuntu fanboy or fangirl. Since that's probably how everybody labels me anyway. I think they make a very good target. That's also part of it.
All right, Daniel, you wanted to get in.
Yeah, just really quick. Like, I think DJ Ware said it best. Like, being behind any one company isn't good for Linux because it is about choice in good ways, outweighs anything that they've done in the past that anybody could see as being bad.
Well, I think that. Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, for me, the test of this was when I was in IT and someone had an issue with their computer. I always had either the CD or a USB key with Ubuntu on it because the hardware compatibility meant that I knew I could fire that computer up and at least get the data off of it, maybe even fix what was wrong with it. It always works. And that's kind of Daniel's point. I think a lot of people's point is it's dependable. It does what it's supposed to do. And it's helped me, personally and professionally. So that's all I had.
Well,
I want to expand on one thing that Eric brought up earlier too, is about the Ubuntu derivatives. Well, I think you have to go back and look at all of the Debian derivatives as well and lump them in there too, because many of the Ubuntu developers are also Debian developers, and the changes that happen in Ubuntu get pushed up to or back to Debian as well. So all of those distributions are also benefiting from that, and that falls in line there too. So,
all right. I would just like to say that. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to elaborate. This is actually to the point I was just saying about if I switch from Mint going to Ubuntu, is I'm looking to go to something that's basically Ubuntu certified, which the best place to go is the original Ubuntu, or the closest would being Pop OS. A lot of what I think goes on here with Ubuntu in itself is that people a lot of it's just lack of understanding. They don't understand Linux as a whole. Ubuntu is the first name that everybody tends to recognize. Now that Canonical's kind of tied their name to Microsoft too, puts another added bitter taste in some people's mouths with this too. But I just think it just comes down to it's like we've had our bias to Windows against Windows, because now that we've all become Linux users or enthusiasts or whatever you want to call us, for whatever reason, you tend to switch that road on how you look at things. And I think it still comes down to that Linux is not understood on where it's truly being used at. We all know it as, we're looking at the desktop here, but a lot of people don't know where it has been. Like we've said about before, the radio stations, the cars we drive, the smart refrigerators, your telephones, it's been around forever. And I just think it comes down to having a proper understanding of what it is. And it still comes down to, it's just people are people. They're either going to like what they like, they're going to hate what they hate, and they're going to turn around and throw digs where they can dig if that's what makes them feel good about themselves. And you just have to move on and ignore it, for whatever reason. I don't know that we're ever going to be able to figure out why people do what they do. I think all we can do is try to, in our little corner of the world here, is just try to change what we can change for not only ourselves, but also people who may be wanting to come here and realize that no, Linux is not a toxic community. It's like any other place. Everybody has their goods and bads, people in there or entities or whatever. And I do think maybe early on in its early days, there was probably a lot of truth to it being toxic, but I don't think that is the case as much anymore. I do see it, like I said, in the Facebook user groups, things like that, every so often where, somebody will ask for help and they're getting nothing but a bunch of emojis or memes or whatever. And that's what gives people a bad taste in their mouths about it too. So it's how you handle it and what you do with the information. I think that makes a difference in its perception.
Well, look, we're running out of time. I just wanted to say that, we look around the landscape and we have tons of distributions based on Ubuntu. They come out with a release every 6 months of a stable operating system. And they have done, in my opinion, more than anything or any entity or anybody out there to bring new people to Linux. They took a system that was for technical geeks and they made it usable for people who are not technical geeks. And if it was not for Ubuntu, I probably would not be here today, because that's the first distros that I tried. That's them putting out the CDs, them putting out all of these things was the reason that got me interested in trying it. And I'm sure a lot of people here can say the same thing, that if it was not for Ubuntu, they would not be here today. And I think the hate for Ubuntu is ridiculous. Yeah, and everybody has made good points. They make bad decisions sometimes. A lot of times they correct them right away. And you also have to look at the fact that they are a company and they're looking to also make money. So it's not like they can make every decision for a desktop user. And, those decisions have to be made by a company. So sometimes they're not going to benefit everybody out here. So all of this has to be taken into account. But I, for one, appreciate what Canonical and Ubuntu has done for all of us. So that's my take. All right, that's going to wrap it up. We're out of time. We're way over time, but everybody gets a last word. Dan?
Well, thanks as always, Rocco, and thanks to Eric too for helping out. Great show, great conversation this week. It was really great. Yeah, I look forward to trying Qubes. I guess I think it's got a good use though. I do have some things that I do want to try in it, so I'm going to give it a try.
Who knows? Maybe we'll be delightfully surprised.
Yeah, I know it's got some specific use cases, so I'm going to give it a go.
All right, Eric, last word.
Thanks, Rocco. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone else, for being here. It's always so great to see everyone and in chat as well. And yeah, Qubes actually looks pretty intriguing. I'm definitely interested in trying it out. And who knows? It could be a game changer for... I could think of something that's like, oh, this would be perfect for that, right? So I'm definitely interested in checking it out. And other than that, everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
All right, Eris, last word.
I'm excited for Qubes. I wish I had a better machine to put it on, but I'll try it anyway, see how it goes. And thank you very much for Ubuntu, to all the developers all these years. It's been a great OS. It's been my home for all these years, and I love it.
Tony, last word.
Thanks for doing it, Rocco, again this week. You sound better than last week, so I assume you are. That's good news. I'd love to say, yes, it's installed, but I can't, because it's actually installing still.
Oh, jeez.
It's taking a long time on the laptop. Maybe it's the spec of the laptop, but at least it will install by the looks of it. So we'll see how it goes next week. Take care, everyone, till next week, and I hope to see you all then.
We found the kryptonite for Tony.
Yeah, 4.8 gig. Thanks.
Jason, last word.
Again, thank you, Rocco, for doing the show. Dan and Eric for helping him out, and all of you guys here for your insights into everything Linux, and that's helpful for everybody. Thank you.
Thomas, last word.
Well, thank you for allowing me on the show again this week. I'm sorry that the script disappointed you in giving you a OS that's going to be more difficult to run. I'm going to try to run Qubes OS in a VM. I'm not expecting it to do very well because VM in a VM does not sound like a good idea.
No.
Yeah, but I'm going to try it anyway. I'll let you know how that goes.
You let us
Don't
know,
expect
dude.
much. Other than that, I can't wait to try out my new Rock Pro 64. Hoorah! And see you guys next week.
Chris, last word.
Well, thank you as always. Love being here. Love being able to get on and talk with you guys. And good night to Zeb, wherever you may be. And I don't think I'll be partaking unless I go out and buy a new laptop. So that might be the inspiration to do so. Other than that, see you next week.
Joe, last word.
Thank you again, as always, for having us. I'm going to repeat what I just said in the chat, too, is I am very, very grateful for not only Ubuntu and Canonical, but any Linux developer out there for giving me a choice in a world where choices are getting more and more few and more rare. And I think I'm most grateful for not only the fact that Linux being a tool, but for the community and the people and the friendships, as always, as I said, that it's created for this. So for me, this is the proverbial cherry on the top, and there's just nothing like it. And I do appreciate everybody here and all the friends I've made. Thank you very much every week for having this. Appreciate all your hard work.
Barb, last word.
As always, I want to thank Rocco and everybody else who makes this possible. And yeah, I'm an Ubuntu fangirl, and that's okay. And I've actually always been a little bit intrigued by Qubes because I've read about it. I thought, that sounds kind of interesting. Not that I'm going to, jump ship and go to Qubes, but I think it's just something interesting to look at. It is definitely different.
Yep, agreed. Steven, last word.
First of all, thanks for the stream, Rocco, Dan, and Eric. The Qubes will be interesting, and I think it will help satisfy my paranoid side. And somebody said that Qubes will be a game changer. Yes, it would be a game changer because you won't be able to play your games. See you guys next week.
Love it, Colin.
Yes, thanks for the platform here, Rocco, and the help from Dan and Eric. I hope is Zeb coming back soon.
I was hoping he was going to be back this week, but I haven't heard from him, so I don't know.
All right, so I hope he's well. I'm looking forward to trying Linux Rubik's Cubes this week. Download it, be there, or be square. I think we want to be square, don't we?
Oh my gosh, here we go. Daniel,
it's going to be so much fun.
Last word.
Oh, okay. Rocco, thanks for everything, as usual. Dan, Eric, for helping out. I love this place. I love being able to chat with you guys. I'm certainly looking forward to trying out Qubes OS. And thanks, Schickel, for all your help last week with that AMD stuff. So that's all I got.
Scrap Joe.
I missed you, Scrapjaw. I'm glad you're back.
I missed you guys.
Nice. Dude, we need the outro music, so you need to do a better job of getting here every week, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll tell you the backstory on Discord if you guys have time.
All right. Adam, last word.
Hey, thanks for the show. Good time. Really regretting not taking a nap. So
wow, thanks, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I tried during the show, but it was so riveting. But anyway, you guys take it easy.
DJ, last word.
Thanks, Rocco. I think this is the first one I've actually completed, and so that makes me a noob to BDO. I'm grateful to Unix, and that's where I started. And so I thank AT&T Bell Labs for starting this whole mess.
There you go. Can we expect a video from about Qubes?
Yes.
Dig it. I love it.
Yes.
Can't wait. Schickel, last word. All of the hard work that goes behind it. I also do want to thank everybody at Canonical and Ubuntu for all of their hard work, and I'm sure there will be some hate comments coming, but that's okay because I do appreciate all of that work. This week on Linux Spotlight, I don't know if you guys watched it yet, but Matt from, Dark One, our friend Dark One, he was on the show and we talked for an hour and 55 minutes, I think. And there's not one clown horn in that episode. So he made it through the whole episode without it. And I even talked to him about a video that he made that probably would have been nothing but clown horns. And he was able to explain that to me and his thoughts on it without one going on. So check that out. Unfortunately, I got some bad news. With me being sick last week, I had to cancel the interview that I scheduled on Sunday, which means I rescheduled it for this Sunday, but there won't be an episode of Linux Spotlight coming out Wednesday because I take pretty much the whole week to edit that. So there will be a skip in Linux Spotlight, but it'll be back on the following week. So there you go. All right. I think that's it. Did I cover everything? Is there anything else I need to cover? All right.
Duct tape works when Rat's concerned.
Our Distro challenge for the week, for the next 2 weeks, is Qubes OS. If you'd like to try it with us, check us out in the Telegram group or on the Discourse forums. We'll be glad to help you out. If you don't want to try it, that's your choice, and you don't have to, and you're still welcome to show up next week. Other than that, we will see you next week. But until then, long live Linux.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great week.
Bye.
Stay healthy.
Bye all.